Hello, everyone, and welcome to Bold Strokes Books January Bookathon. I'm Nance Sparks. I'll be moderating this panel, and we're talking about our character's workplace today. So I'm going to throw out well, actually, why don't we go around, let everybody introduce yourselves and tell us what you're working on, and then we'll jump right into characters' workplaces. You know what, Georgie, you want to kick it off?
I can kick whatever you want me to kick, Nance.
Not Archie. We love Archie.
Not Archie. Never Archie. No. I am Georgia Beers. I write contemporary, traditional contemporary romance, or is it contemporary traditional? I don't know. I write romance. I am. What's available is the most recent available book is On the Rocks, which is the middle of a series. The third and final installment is due on in April. And I'm currently working on a book called Camp Lost and Found, about a couple of women who end up at the same summer camp, defunct summer camp, and discover that they actually need each other.
Very cool. Mary?
I also write contemporary romances, traditional, I guess, not sure. This is the current one, Suspecting Her. I am now working on a mystery, which I've never written before, so I had to read a ton of them to make sure I was doing the right thing. It's based on a 40-year-old cold case murder. That'll probably be out in 23. It's going to take me a while to write this one.
Isn't it great when your homework is to read books?
Yes, I love that.
Nancy?
Oh, my latest book out is a veterinary surgeon, and it's about a veterinarian who's clearly a surgeon and a police officer. The one I'm working on now, just for a bit of a change, doesn't include a veterinarian, but I've sort of stuck with the agriculture theme, and I have a farmer in it, and maybe we'll just see what happens.
Very cool. And Amanda, what are you
thanks,
working
Nance. So I'm from Chester in the United Kingdom. I've written, I think, around 25 novels. I lose count. It's really hard. I'm not quite at the dizzy heights of some of us, but I'm getting there. My most recent release is Humbug. Like Georgia and Mary, contemporary romance, I think, is where we sit. And my next book is Reading Her, which is coming out in February.
Very cool. And finally, Carsen.
Yes, my name is Carsen Taite, and and I write contemporary romance as well, primarily romantic intrigue, but I have a mix of traditional contemporary romance in there as well. And my book that's featured this weekend is Trial by Fire, which is the first in the Courting Danger romance series, which I also call the Workplace romance series because it all takes place at one courthouse. All of the books take place at the same courthouse. My February release is called Perilous Obsession. It's about a cold case, and there's a reporter and a cop, and I'm currently working on a follow-up to her consigliere, which is called Made for Her, featuring the bodyguard who is in the other book. So there you go.
All right. Well, excellent segue with the workplace. So we'll just continue to pick on you and ask you, how do you choose the line of work for your characters?
Well, it's interesting because my very first book I wrote had nothing to do with the law, and it had to do with a restaurateur because, that's one of my dream jobs someday, which I know is not really a dream job because it's very much a drudge. And especially nowadays, but I've always thought it would be great to have a restaurant. So basically, I choose the line of work based on what interests me at the time. I've had a hotelier, a restaurateur, but I am known for placing people in the legal field. So I have a lot of books with lawyers, and that's because I am one. So.
Wonderful. Amanda, how do you choose your line of work for your characters?
Well, most of my novels start with an idea of a character or a situation I'd put a character in. So from there, I think about what line of work would fit either that style or character, or the situation I want to put them in, where they most likely to come into that situation. So in my book, Under Her Influence, I wanted someone who was not at all technically savvy, had no idea about social media at all, to meet a social media influencer, because I just like the idea of that contrast. So I decided to create a theme park, because then they'd have to be in each other's sphere for a very long time, and the stakes as high as possible, rather than the theme park owner being just someone in events. She actually owned a theme park, family run business for many years, just to raise those stakes even higher. So a lot of the time it comes from wanting to highlight whatever the book's going to be about, and putting them in a situation that's going to really highlight that. So in Reading Her, which is coming up in February, as I say, I wanted that to be an opposite attract story, and I wanted one of them to be very, very well educated and highly read, and the other person to not be in that sphere at all. So it ended up being a barrister who's obviously surrounded by books every day, and a fitness instructor who doesn't even need to pick up a pen in her line of work. So for me, it's whatever either one of the characters, or more likely the situation, needs in that book.
Wonderful. How about you, Nancy?
My first series of books are romance novels, and they take place in and around a veterinary clinic in rural Saskatchewan in Canada. And I picked that because I modeled it after where I worked, and some of the situations after where I worked. So it helped me kind of bring some life and some depth, and a good story to the characters. The second character is someone they might run across in the course of their work. But anybody who has an animal is going to have some interaction with their vet, so it can make for a lot of fun. In Veterinary Surgeon, the last novel, some controlled drugs go missing from the vet clinic, and so it brings the police officer into the mix, and gives some sort of delicious conflict there. So
Very cool. Mary.
Well, I'm in Amanda's camp. I mean, I think your heroine has to be, your main character has to be doing something that is going to meld with your plot. But also for me, I need to be placed. That character needs to be placed in something I know or understand, or else I have to do a ton of research, which I've had to do for the current book. But for instance, my first book, she was an executive assistant. I spent 30 years doing that. So I thought, well, this is kind of a shoo-in. The second book, she was a painter, and I thought, okay, it's creative. I had to do some research about how to actually do a painting, which was kind of fun. So the third book, though, was actually a gauntlet thrown down by Allie Valley on a panel that I was on last year. We were asked what would be the most boring career, and someone said, well, several people said accountant, and I thought, ooh, I'm going to pick that up and see what I can do with that. And it happens that this third book involves embezzlement. So I thought, okay, there we go. I did
Way to make it count and exciting.
Yeah, I hope so.
Wonderful. And Georgia?
I'm a lot in Amanda's camp as far as the occupations of my main characters need to be part of the plot, but that's almost the first thing that I come up with when I'm crafting a new book, is what their jobs are. And I'm not really sure why that is, unless it's just, that's the way that I identify these people. And a lot of times their job works for conflict purposes, like they're at opposite ends of whatever. You've got, I've written Hopeless Romantic had a wedding planner and the divorce attorney who presided over her divorce. I have had bosses and subordinates. I've had someone who owns a shop and a real estate agent who's about to sell the building out from under her. So a lot of times the occupation informs the conflict, not always. And then if that's not the case for me, I try to find something, sometimes it's just something that's interesting. Sometimes something that I want my readers to be able to identify with. We don't all have huge highfalutin careers. Some of us are office administrators, and some of us are cashiers in a grocery store, and some of us are assistants.
Oh, you froze.
Oh, I like to make sure to throw some of that stuff in there as well. Did I freeze?
Yes,
Just for
you
a sec.
froze.
Sorry,
You're back now.
I was done.
But your hair looked really good.
Thank you.
And freeze.
And I want to remind everybody who's joined us for this discussion, if you have any questions for our authors, please put them in a Q&A box and we will certainly work those in. So I'm going to skip ahead a little bit because since Georgia brought up a boss and a subordinate, how do you feel about love in the workplace, and have you had your characters kissing or doing more? And I'll let Georgia kick that one off.
It's funny because I have been writing for so long that I think people just assume this is what I've always done, but I was actually in an office setting. I worked in corporate America for 17 years before I was a full-time writer. So no, I have never done anything I shouldn't do in the office. And I'm trying to think if I've had my characters, they probably have, but I had my share of crushes on clients. And so I think that's why I love the office romance so much. But I think in this day and age, you also have to be careful and you have to make sure that consent is a thing, you know,
Yes.
because having someone who's in a position of authority in some kind of a sexual relationship with someone who is beneath them in more ways than one, is you got to be careful of that now. And not that you didn't have to be careful about it before, but it's a lot more prominent now. So you really have to make sure that consent is in there somehow very clearly.
Right, absolutely. How about you, Nancy?
I think you're
You're
on
muted.
mute, Nancy.
You're mute.
Sorry, gang.
That was awesome.
I'm fighting a bit of a cough here, so I've been muting myself. Anyway, I think that Georgia hit on it. I think a romance in a workplace can work if you're very careful. I think of maybe colleagues that are on an equal footing. You know, professionally, that could work. And have I ever been involved personally in a workplace romance? I would say no, probably felt more into the fantasy side and well, geez, probably for the first 10 years of my working life, it was in the closet. So, you know, everybody had to be careful about that. So, and have my characters done more than just kiss at work? I guess you'll just have to read to find out.
All right, wonderful. Mary?
I have not said anything there yet because, like Georgia said, it might be a little. You have to think about it today. It's different today than several years ago. I would have an experience I could call upon, but I'm still thinking about whether or not to do that. Although I love books like Rosalind Sinclair's, I think it was The X Factor. That was fabulous, and it all took place in most of it in the workplace. And I don't know what year it was written. I'd have to go back and look at it, but I do keep thinking, can I do it? I'd kind of like to, but I haven't quite arrived there yet.
Got it. Very good. Amanda?
Yeah, I've had characters kiss at work. In Humbug, they do. So there's an office romance there between the CEO and her sort of new assistant. But that's after a few conversations about consent and power imbalance, especially with Rosalind, who's the older, the CEO character, has a conversation with her daughter who said, oh, she's perfect for you, you should be in a relationship. And Rosalind has to have that conversation about power imbalance and explain that to her. And I'm always very careful to do that because, like Georgia touches on, it's a very sensitive subject. And I think you've got to be very careful. And I'm always mindful of the fact that younger readers could read my book. And I want them to be aware of those issues and how to identify them and how to navigate them. And I think consent is really, really important. It's also very sexy in a book as well. So I think you can navigate those kind of areas quite well if you're mindful of them. So yeah, like Georgia, I've written my fair share of office romances. I'm sure they've kissed at work, probably not gone any further than that, but there's always a chat about consent and the sort of power imbalance issues, just to ensure that I can sleep at night, that I've actually sort of done what I need to do to make that feel right at the end of the day. And I've never had an office romance or anything like that. But then I've worked in some very, very boring environments with some very boring people. So no, unfortunately, no one as exciting as everyone else.
All right. How about you, Carsen?
Well, I would say a vast majority of my books are set in the workplace, because I mean, the courthouse is, teeming with lawyers, and a lot of those people work there on a daily basis, and a lot of their lives are consumed by it. And so it's like any environment like that where you're working with all these people all the time, and it's not a 9 to 5 job. You often, those are the people in your life, so meeting someone is hard outside of that environment, not just because of the geographic factor, but just because you're talking about stuff, like it just naturally spills over into your private time. So there is a lot. Most of those people are on equal footing. I did write one book with a judge and her law clerk sidebar. And I had to be very careful in that book because it was an age gap and a power imbalance just by virtue of the occupation. And so that was a tricky plot and to navigate in terms of how the characters related to each other. But it was fun, and I really enjoyed writing it. And I had a lot of good response to that, because I think a lot of people can relate to having a crush on your boss. But there is definitely, we all need to be cognizant about consent, and like Amanda said, it can be very sexy. So there's nothing wrong with wrapping that into the story. I currently sleep every night with my business partner, so yeah, I definitely am living a workplace romance.
Wonderful. All right, let's see here. We already got the on a personal note side, so that one's all taken care of. Does the chosen line of work for your character help you with your character's depth, the depth of your character? Nancy, we'll let you unmute and
It can, because and I will go back to being a veterinarian, I guess, because I am one and have been for 20 years. So that's what I draw on. I think some of the things that happen at work, some of the interactions with animals, some of the times things don't go as well as you'd like. That certainly can give a character some depth, some insecurity, some wakeless nights, where you just think, well, if I'd just been a little bit better, I just known a little bit more, maybe I could have done something here. So it can certainly lead to a lot of anxiety and stress, and I can speak to that personally. So.
Very good. Carsen, does the chosen line of work help you with character depth?
Yeah, I mean, I think it can to the extent that you let it or want it to. In this book, Trial by Fire, one of the characters, Lennox, is a prosecutor and can see no other. I mean, she doesn't understand why anyone would ever want to be on the other side. And part of that is things that happened to her in her past, and her family brought her to that point. So, when I chose who would be who and what their backstory was, I mean, it was natural for her to be a prosecutor, because it just helped her it was her way of finding justice in the world. And the other character is just her occupation as a lawyer is not as tied to her own backstory, what drives her as much. So she has done various things. She's been a business attorney. She's a public defender. She's different things, but she doesn't have the same impetus for choosing why she is what she is. So it can work as much as you want it to, if that makes sense.
It does. Makes perfect sense. How about you, Mary? Do you choose choose a profession, or do you look at the profession to help create depth to your character?
I definitely look to the profession to help create that depth. For instance, in Suspecting Her with Aaron O'Connor being a painter, it was a lot of fun having a character who looked at the world through a painter's eyes. So I got to do a lot of things that I ordinarily wouldn't. And I'm having equal fun. The new book I think will be called Cold Case Heat. And I'm having a lot of fun having Sydney Hansen look at the world through an accountant's eyes. Everything is counted and measured with her. So, and that's something I've never done before either.
Very fun. Amanda?
Yeah, I definitely use the character's job to add depth, because I think you can decide a lot of a character's personality based on what job they do. People don't generally fall into jobs they're completely unsuited for. So, you know, stereotypes are stereotypes. If you're looking at a CEO, they're probably a bit of an ice queen personality. Like Mary says, an accountant is more likely to be thoughtful and pragmatic, methodical, someone plays by the rules. So you're just instantly writing the rule book for what your character's going to be by giving them a job that fits with the personality that you're trying to write them for. So in Humbug, Ellie is the younger character, and she's actually a statistician by trade, like what she went to university for, and she just fell into a job in this recruitment firm. She's completely unsuited and probably very unhappy with it, but she's just plodding along. It suits her personality, because as she gets risen up to Rosalind's PA, and she has to organize a Christmas party, she's suddenly realizing she can use those statistical skills that she never used in her marketing job before. So it helps immediately to sort of show that that's the kind of analytical person this is, even though, you know, she has a love of Christmas and she's completely obsessed with the whole idea of Christmas and has perma tinsel around her desk. You can get an insight into her mind that she's not just about Christmas, she's also about methodical, pragmatic planning and things like that. And it's just a good shortcut to telling someone this is this character's personality.
Wonderful. And Georgia, we all love the kitty.
No, he doesn't listen. He just stands here when he wants to.
Ever listen.
I tend to agree with Carsen on this, where I think the character's occupation can show their depth if you want it to. I don't think it has to, but I think if, and in most cases you're going to. A lot of times, and as Amanda was just saying, it's about giving the reader a peek into what kind of personality your character has without saying, here's what their personality is. When I wrote Right Here, Right Now, I had Lacey, who was a one-man show CPA in her office, quiet, you know, she's an introvert, she's working on her numbers. And then in the next office over is Addison and her marketing group. I think it was Addison, I don't remember. But her marketing or this is Calendar Girl. But she's got a staff and they're loud and they play because this is how they figure out it's advertising. This is how they figure out what works. So I liked having these two jobs with these two women who had completely opposite personalities. Sorry, he's on my keyboard. Yes, is my answer. Sorry. You have to go over there, please.
All right, let's have a little bit of fun with this. So what is the favorite line of work you've ever given your characters and why? Anyone who wants to go.
Wine bar owner.
For reasons totally known.
Well, you know what? The place that I went to do the research, the woman who owns it has ended up being one of my very best friends in the world. And so I've gotten not only inside information on how to run the wine bar, but I get to see what that does for her day and how she relates to her customers and her personality and the fun that goes, the fun between her and her regulars. And it's just a really cool, I mean, I'm an introvert and I would never be good at it because people would irritate me, but she's not. And to sit in a corner of her wine bar and just watch her work is a lot of fun. So I think that was my favorite.
Excellent. Amanda,
Amanda was very sweet and raised her hand and I just
no.
So, sorry about that.
Sorry.
British.
Yeah. I think for me, it was when I wrote Lost at Sea about a cruise ship and the cruise ship captain. So then I had to go on a cruise around the Mediterranean because I don't know how that worked. Yeah,
absolutely.
It was
terrible.
It was awful. But you have to do the research if you're gonna really put the detail in and stalk the captain of the ship to a small degree and try to figure out where the bridge was, because that wasn't easy. But no, I found that really fascinating because I didn't really think about it before. Like, you kind of know there's a captain of a ship, and yeah, they're busy people. So I think for me that was really fascinating. So I did a behind the scenes tour as well, and there's about 2,000 members of crew downstairs, like in the bows of these ships, and it was just really fascinating to learn about it all and then incorporate 5% of that research into the actual book.
That's how it goes. Yep.
Who else would like to answer that one? Favorite career you've given your characters and why?
Carsen, is it lawyer?
No,
I think it might be lawyer.
it's not. It's not. It's bounty hunter.
Ooh, yes, Luca
Ooh.
Bennett.
Because bounty hunters are kind of sketchy folks, and because they're not law enforcement people, but they go and grab people and turn them in for money. So which normally is like kidnapping. But so it's they just get to live a little on the edge, and I just long to live on the edge. That is what
All
and maybe I do at night. Maybe I'm a bounty hunter at night. I can't tell you.
Maybe I never know.
Nancy or Mary?
Sure, I could say something. In my second book, Veterinary Technician, I made one of the characters a school teacher. And I've never been a school teacher, but I have lots of friends who are. And if anybody has friends who are school teachers, it can be kind of a frustrating job. And so I heard lots of stories. So I incorporated some of those. And my character in Veterinary Technician, she's a bit of a procrastinator. And so accidentally she gets the job of organizing sort of a summer fun fair for all the students. And just fun watching her kind of get tortured into all that and everything she has to organize, and kind of borrowed some stories from some friends and for parent teacher nights too. I think I remember one saying that she was sorry email had ever been invented because she could get all these emails from parents and just
It's much easier to yell at a person over email than it is to go in person and sit in front of
that's right.
across
It
the
should
desk.
say, come and see me. And usually that took care of about 90% of people wouldn't get around to coming and seeing her, but
Very fun. How about you, Mary? It's the
gonna
most
say
unusual.
I'm going to say I haven't written mine yet. I've only
All
got
right.
I've only got 2 books under my belt with a third, that I'm working on. And I think I'm going to need to get a little further away from anything I've been to find, something that I'm going to find really fascinating.
Fair enough. We do have a question from the audience. Joan would like to know something from Carsen. What kind of research did you do for the bounty hunter book?
Well, some of it I won't tell you, but no, I did go and talk to a few bondsmen that I know who are sometimes also work as bounty hunters, because they're, if you post a bond and then you don't show up for court, they're on the hook, so they'll come find you. And that's different than someone who just does bounty hunting, but also fascinating tales. If you can get them to talk to you, that's the hard part.
Oh, I can't imagine.
well, I think what's also cool about that, Carsen, is lots of countries don't have that system. We don't have that system in Canada, so it's kind of even more interesting to kind of read the stories about it.
Okay, but you guys are so polite, you probably just show up for court. If you
I have no idea what bounties and bondsmen was. I watched an episode of Dog the Bounty Hunter because it was like a live reaction. My friends had said, I want you to watch this and I want to watch you watch it. So I was like, okay. So I watched it and I was like, what's happening? Why is he going after these people? Why does he, the money, I don't, it's just like a completely new world to me. And I was like, and then I got obsessed with it. So I had to watch like a whole series, but
see.
George is about to lock her cat in the closet. I can see it coming.
He is just knocking stuff off of this desk left and right.
That's his job.
Oh,
He's your coworker. That's his job, is your coworker.
he's in his
That's
bed
right.
now. Hopefully he will stay there.
All right. Have you ever given your character, any character, a career that just didn't work out? That just, ended up having to go back and change it because it didn't suit their personality. Their personality became something different or morphed, or, is there ever a time that it just didn't work out? Anybody, jump in.
Yeah, I did in the when I wrote The Road Ahead. It was two characters heading home. They were going home from Portugal. They had a deadline. They both needed to get home for Christmas, and there had been a massive power cut, and all air traffic control was out in Portugal. One of them couldn't afford a hire car. The other one could afford a hire car, but had broken her leg, so couldn't drive. So between the two of them, they're in the car and they're driving home. And all the way through, I was thinking the Ice Queen character would just be in a generic marketing job. I quite often go towards insurance, finance, or marketing because they're generic and easy enough that I know what the work involves, but the work's not interesting enough that it's going to divert from the story. But I knew that it was going to be a book of two halves, the journey, and then they would come back together later. And I kind of thought, I deal with the when they get back together later bit later. And they got back to England, and I thought, why is this woman needing to speak to either an insurance person, a finance person, or a marketing? But I couldn't think of any reason at all. So I had to go back and feed in a career where she was an estate agent, or a realtor, as you would say in America, which worked out much better. So yeah, I was all the way going through and her talking about her advertising career and her marketing business, and then I just had to put all of that out.
Very cool. How about you, Georgia? You ever had to change your career?
I don't think I have. I think that while I can't think of an exact example of this, I think I've had instances where maybe in the beginning I thought that the career would play more of a part than it did. In my head, I'm thinking, oh, this person's got this job and I can put in this and this and this, and then that doesn't end up needing to go in. It doesn't add to the story. So the job becomes a little less important than I initially thought, but I can't think of an example of when I had to change it completely.
Okay. Carsen?
I think I've changed maybe secondary characters, like I don't always know in the mystery or intrigue who the perp, the bad guy, the bad woman. I don't always know that ending and how that's going to resolve, or who that even is sometimes when I start. So sometimes that evolves as I'm going. I know I did that in the February book. I've drastically changed the bad guy or the bad woman, or whoever it is, to fit how my story was playing out. So
how about you, Mary? Have you ever had to change your character's line of work? Or
Not so far, not yet.
I guess I could offer up that, oh, sorry, was Mary done?
Done. Yep.
Okay. In my first book, Veterinary Partner, that I was thinking about your question, and she stayed a veterinarian, but there's so many different things you could do with that degree. She went from being, a Toronto, big city, busy small animal veterinarian with sort of a clientele with deep pockets, to moving to a rural area where money's tighter and the problems are different, and she has to suddenly remember all her medicine on cattle and horses, and not just the cats and dogs. And it's a different sort of pace of life, sort of like New York City versus Midwest rural farming area. So she stayed a veterinarian, but she very much had to adapt, and it wasn't easy.
very good. Very good. Do any of you have a career that just fascinates you and you'd like to work into a book that's not in a book now, or maybe it is and we haven't talked about it, but just something totally fresh that would be fun to create a character around? I see gears turning.
I can answer to that one.
Go for it, Georgia.
There are some that I think would be super interesting, but I hate research. So the more complicated they get, the less likely they are that I would latch onto them. But like one is a sommelier, and I know I keep coming back to wine, and I promise I don't have a problem, but but I think the details of understanding wine and the different varietals and being able to sip something and understand what kind of soil the grapes were grown in is just fascinating to me. And it's a little bit too sciencey for my brain, but I would love to watch somebody else learn how to do that. And then also a chocolatier. I would love to just sit be a fly on the wall of a chocolatier and watch them make chocolate and come up with flavors, not like chocolate in shapes, but like different flavors and textures and adding different. I just think that's fascinating. Food and wine to me is amazing. And I'm not good at either one. I'm good at consuming both of them, but I don't know what to do with them otherwise.
Wonderful. Anybody else like to jump in on that one? Do you have a career that just fascinates you and you'd love to create a character around it?
Well, I looked into one and I haven't quite given it up yet, but it was within the federal government. There's a wildlife enforcement agency, and oh geez, you're going, oh, government employee, and to snore, but really just catching the bad guys, or poaching, or picking on animals, or targeting endangered species, something like that. Just sort of just trying to rescue some of those poor creatures. And there's lots of great stories. You just have to do a little bit of a Google, and you get great stories. And I remember a really good one I read about. It was, I think they were tigers in India, and for research they tagged them all, and criminals figured out how they could track these tags. So they could, get on the internet and a map, and they could track them down. They could say, there it is, let's go over there. And so that, went from being research to sort of helping the animal to inadvertently endangering them some more. So I thought that would be kind of cool.
Very cool. Anyone else have a career that just totally floats your boat?
Well,
We have a question of, sorry, go ahead.
I'll jump in. I wrote a short story about a dominatrix, and it really kind of got me interested in what would this be like if it was a career? Where would you have started, and etc. It was Cleus Press. It was Sinclair Sexsmith Volume 4, I think, of Best Lesbian Erotica. So I've sort of been toying with that. I've been taking notes. It will take a lot of research, but I think I can do it.
Twist your arm. I'll have to read more books.
You said anything about books?
I don't think she was talking about reading.
No. I was trying to keep it G just in case, but we can go down that road. Somebody wanted to know about writing a book that features a romance author. Anybody considered it?
I have more than once. I probably will at some point, but it's been done a lot. So I think if you're going to do it, you have to have your own unique angle. And I don't have that yet, but someday.
Okay, very well. Look forward to that. That's great. Does the audience have any other questions for our authors? We would love some more questions. So what do we have in the wings for future works? I know we talked a little bit about next books coming out, but what are you working on now or outlining? Is there anything spicy, fun? Mary, you're working on your book.
I am working on the third one, and the next one that intrigues me, I'm beginning to outline, and I don't, there's not a lot there yet. I've been told that you're not supposed to have your characters involved if one of them is married. So I'm trying to figure out how to get that married character not married so the story can take off. She had been married to a film executive, and her best, the film executive's best friend has really fallen in love with her, and they're going on a road trip to an award ceremony, even though theoretically, she's not married anymore, but she's going to the ceremony anyway. And that's where the best friend is going to try and woo her and seduce her.
Oh, very
sort of on
fun.
the back burner.
We'll be curious to see how you work out the ending the relationship.
Yeah, me too.
Anybody else have any fun ideas for future books that are just kind of chattering at you?
Yeah, I'm working on. I'm probably wrong to do this, but I'm still going to do it anyway. I'm working on a coronavirus start of the pandemic story. Why not?
True.
Why not? Because I think we are beyond, for the most part, the worst of the trauma. And certainly by the time I've written it and it come out, we will be able to look back at the start. And I think it's fascinating because certainly here in the UK, like we locked down, like the shops were closed. We could go out for an hour a day. Like it was such a unique, strange scenario. And I want to explore that. I probably need to go through it for my own therapy because I'm, traumatized by it. And I had this idea about all the people who going into the pandemic had been living their life and making decisions and doing things that probably if they knew a pandemic was coming, they wouldn't have done. And one of them is a doctor who decided she's single. No, she's going to remain single, but wants a child. So she goes through, I'm not sure if she's going to adopt or go through IVF, but she has a baby and she has a 1-year-old as the pandemic hits. And she has to go into the NHS and she has to work. She has to figure out how to have her baby looked after because the elderly neighbor who used to babysit is now not very happy about having a doctor's baby in her apartment when there's this strange virus floating around. But there is a neighbor who lives further up who used to work in childcare. So they're going to come together. So I'm still working on all the details of that. And I pitched it to my wife. I said, so picture it. It's March 2020 and a pandemic's hitting. And my wife just went, no. and I thought, okay. So I pitched it to Sandy and Sandy went, but I'm doing it. So, hopefully it'll be okay.
Love it.
Well, and I think it's interesting because I think that you need to write that because I think a lot of us won't. Like, I don't ever plan to even touch the pandemic. That's my plan is like, nope, it doesn't exist. It never happened in my books.
Well,
but
that's just it.
I think that because there are people like me, then there need to be people like you who say, all right, I'm going to dive into this.
Yeah, I just want to acknowledge it once. I want to go like, because we can't all just be like, forever. Like,
well, we can.
We can actually.
Yeah, that's true. But I just felt like the pandemic's been terrible. It continues to be terrible, but there are some good things that have happened. People really came together in a way, and there are some good things. I think we do have to reflect on them. For one book, I mean, I'm not referencing the damn thing ever again. It gets its one book. It had 2 years of my life in a novel, and that's it. And then it can go away. So,
Corona series.
No.
Oh.
No, that is really fascinating. I mean, I don't want to write about it, but I really enjoyed, I watched the morning show and I found it fascinating. It was just that they took that at the beginning of the pandemic when people were like, just on the morning news, they were talking about, silly things that they talk about on the morning news. And this one guy's in China and he's trapped there and he's like, please put me on the air so I could talk about what's happening here. And they were all like, and now for recipes, and most of us were like that. My wife was watching those people on the cruise ship back in early January of 2020 saying, we need to go buy things like a pulsometer and a blah. And I'm like, seriously?
Yeah, I was.
And a
I
ton
was
of
in
toilet
America.
paper.
But she was totally right.
I was in America. I was in America for like the end of January, start of February. And when I got back to the UK, I mean, we were in America for about 3 weeks. When I got back to the UK, like things were noticeably different. And I think I saw that differently because I'd been, in America where people were like, yeah, like loads of people have died, but it's far away. So there's the puppy. And he's called Bob. And I was just like, what's the people who dying thing? And then suddenly a week later, it's like, people are dying in Seattle now. Bob's having a birthday. And I was just like, no, this is getting close. I want to go that way. And when I got home back in the UK, it was really like, it was like that acknowledgement that this is getting real and it's coming and something's going to happen, but we're going to all ignore it until it arrives. And then it happened really, really quickly in March. But I just thought it was such a unique time. Yeah, and I need therapy for it. So it's getting written.
There you go.
Will we get therapy from reading it?
Yeah, oh, it's gonna be lovely. It's gonna, I mean, you know, I'm not, no, you're not gonna see anything nasty. It's gonna be a nice relationship where people come together and they're all nice and happy. And it's, you know, it's gonna be, if you can, with a positive spin, there will be a positive spin to it.
Excellent.
Wonderful. We have one couple questions and then we'll wrap things up. We have a question from Joan who'd like to know who's a plotter or who's a pantster or who's a blend. So if we just want to go round robin, Georgia, plotter or pantster?
I started out as a plotter and then I became a pantser and then I was a planter and now I'm a plotter again.
Okay. You
Full
found it.
circle. Well, and it's because as I've gotten older, I can't remember things as much anymore. I have to write it down.
That's what Post-its are for.
And that's what I write them on. I got index cards.
Mary, plotter or pantster?
I'm a bit of both. I mean, I do the outline, but then sometimes you get into a point where you're like, this isn't working. And so, yeah, you throw in some pantser moments and then go back to the outline and hope it works. Sometimes it does.
Perfect. Nancy?
I guess I would say I start with a book as a pantser, kind of just come up with kind of a rough idea and just start writing. And I get, you know, a few thousand words in and I start to see how this would come together. And then I plot it out. And sometimes I have to throw out whole chapters and thousands of words that just didn't fit. But it was all sort of the process, and I'm just learning too. So I think kind of knowing how things are going to end up, it helps sort of set them up at the beginning a little bit better for me. So
Very good. Amanda, plotter or pantster?
I was a plotter and then I lost my mind at some point over the last year and a half and I thought I could be a pantser and it doesn't work. What happened? Like I was like, oh, that'll be fine. Wasn't fine. But this next one will be plotting. So
all right. Carsen.
I'm a pantster and I really, really want to be a plotter, but I'm kind of like Nancy. I mean, you know, some plotters I know write an outline and character sketches and all this work ahead of time, and I just kind of do it during. Like, and I often wind up throwing out whole bunches of things or having to rewrite everything, but I kind of like to be thrown in a pile of stuff and dig my way out. But I hate it when it's happening, but I can't seem to do it the other way. 30, almost 30 books or 30, I don't know, however many books. I keep trying to plot, but it doesn't work.
All right. And then we had a question about, do any of you have any research tips when you're researching for a book, workplace, character? Research tips. Anybody who'd like to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give a couple. If you can get to the place where your book is set, you know, there's nothing like boots on the ground because you can smell the smells and hear the sounds and that kind of thing. But often you can't, but you can experience other people's experiences. There's a lot of good blogs and YouTube videos and things out there where you can emulate that experience through other people's eyes, and never be afraid to reach out to people to ask them about their jobs because people love to talk about what they do. You know, Georgia has a good friend at a wine bar now because of that. So
Right,
you know,
Exactly.
just
Very good. Well, I would like to thank you all for joining us for this session on workplace. So thank you. Thank
Thanks,
you all.
everybody.
We really appreciate it.
Nance.
thanks,
thanks
Nance,
everyone.
See everyone.
everybody.